Thank you so much for having me here. It's really nice to not be in the UK where we're all arguing about Brexit at the moment. So this is a wonderful break for me and I'm really happy to be in Finland. So I'm here to talk to you about how traditional newspapers can access new audiences through YouTube. I'm sure you're all familiar with The Guardian as a newspaper, but people often say to me, what do you do at The Guardian? And I say, I present and produce videos. And people say, oh, The Guardian does videos. And that's because our content for videos is all online. So we are having different audiences online. We try to reach younger people. We try to reach a more international audience. And we find that videos has been very, very, very successful in helping us to achieve this. But we recently started a new project with the Google News Initiative, who had funding, which was put in place to help create YouTube-first content. And so a number of different organizations pitched to have the funding with different proposals. And because The Guardian has been quietly working in the background doing video content, we succeeded in basically securing this funding. And they wanted us to come up with YouTube-first content, which meant that the videos we did wouldn't necessarily go on our platform first. They would go on YouTube, and then we would see if they would do well with our traditional audiences on our website. So the reason for this, one of the reasons for this, and one of the reasons it's important for us at The Guardian to be part of this initiative, is because if you are familiar with the business model that The Guardian is using at the moment, it's based on membership. So there have been issues to do with advertising rates, just not being able to sustain the model. So The Guardian has very much tried to strengthen its brand and get readers to pay a membership so that they can have access to the news. And in order for that to work, in order for that to be maintained, we need to continually be reaching out to new people, continually be widening basically the number of people that can be supporting our journalism. And YouTube is a wonderful tool for doing that because it's got such wide reach that we don't have alone as The Guardian. And also, it's very important, especially with our brand at The Guardian, that we can establish a sense of community and interactions, and YouTube is a wonderful place for that. And it's being used very well by YouTubers and non-traditional media. And so if we can carve out a space there, it's very, very good for our brand and basically making us better known across the world. So, because of the funding that we had, it meant that we could basically cherry pick our teams. With traditional media, it's very difficult in the UK to hire younger journalists and to change things up and move with the shift that's happening with digital media. And so with this funding, we could kind of put together a team, curate some different people with new, fresh ideas. And part of that has been diversifying. So there are many female presenters, there are very diverse backgrounds, and people from all different areas who have been feeding into this project. And I just think that's been really, really positive overall. Our boss, Paul Boyd, he is an older white man, and he's actually been fantastic in putting together this whole team. He's been amazing. And I just think the team overall is a really, really important starting point in something that's going to be innovative and different. So this is me. I am a digital journalist. So before, I've always done things which were online. I do videos. I've reported a lot on terrorist attacks. My most big stories that I did were the Bataclan attacks, Charlie Hebdo, a lot of things in France and in other parts of Europe. And I've also covered things like knife crime in the UK, culture and football. And I write as well for the newspaper. So I have my grounding in more traditional journalism in the writing part, but I bring those skills and have transferred them over to YouTube. And personally, the project that I worked on for The Guardian on YouTube drew from the skills and experience that I had as a journalist in the more traditional areas. And those areas were, because of terrorism and knife crime and violence, were predominantly male spaces. And I looked online, and I spent a lot of time on YouTube, and YouTube has a slight tilt in the direction of a male audience. And I felt that, while The Guardian is well known for reporting on women's issues and women's stories, there was definitely a new space that we could go into, claiming some ownership in the discussion around men and the issues affecting men. So Like I say, The Guardian is very well known for covering women's issues, but in the UK, where we have very kind of tribal approaches to media and the way that we look at the world, it does have an impression of being, just people that talk about feminism and not eating any, meat or dairy, and people always kind of think that we are a caricature that can't talk about other subjects beyond that. And so while we care about the environment, we care about women's issues, I think it's important that we can show that we can also talk about men's issues and the fact that men are more likely to be in prison than women are. Men are more likely to take their own lives than women are, and they're actually more likely to be the victims of violence. And so I felt like there was definitely a big area that we could go into, especially on YouTube, where some of the comments before have shown that people don't understand that that is something that we could definitely do. And online, there's a lot of toxic discussion when it comes to these difficult issues. And we thought that if we could approach it in a new, different way that wasn't combative and wasn't binary and polarized, that maybe we could get a new audience and maybe we could get people to come and listen to what it was that we were doing. So the whole point was that it was relaxed and casual in a way, but that it was all truth-based and that it was all very, very professionally done. So it's striking that balance between the two. So it's for YouTube and quite conversational, but also we are The Guardian and we're respected as a news organization. And so there is an informal tone, but underneath there is actually a really, really strong message that we're trying to get across in a way that is easier for people that maybe are not traditional Guardian readers. And the last point is that it's community-focused. So when we were doing these videos, usually, I would try not to engage with comments because they can be very, very toxic and negative, and you will also find that the normal readers are not leaving comments some of the time. So it can sometimes skew the way you look at the response. But I decided to get involved in the comments. I would respond to people, and it was very interesting that sometimes people that would put a negative comment saying, why is a woman doing this, or some sense of criticism, when I would message them and explain something in a really understanding and clear way, they would respond back positively. And so I found that to be actually a really, really useful thing for us to be able to do. I'm going to show you a clip now from the first episode. It feels really funny saying this as like a Guardian journalist. But I'm aware.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're just aware of the stereotypes. Half Muslim, half white, young millennial gone off here to go to Jordan Peterson video, and I'm like, it's not what you think.
Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not?
Is modern masculinity in crisis? As a journalist, I've covered many different stories, from terrorism to football to knife crime. And in doing so, I often find myself in male-dominated spaces. I've seen that there are many issues affecting men today that we're not properly focusing on, and I want to do more to address these.
You get a lot of men who have no idea who they are, none whatsoever.
As soon as you mention men and masculinity online, the discussion becomes extremely partisan and really polarised. Post-Me Too, it's even harder to talk about these things, but more necessary than ever. I'm not saying we're going to get all of the answers to the big questions in this series, but I just want to open up the debate to some new voices. We did a call out to our readers asking them what they thought we should cover, and their answers were very telling. Think that normal emotions such as anger and frustration aren't considered normal by many people. Do we all have the right to express solidarity with our gender? Me Too has blurred the lines between genuine romantic approach versus harassment. Where is the line? Where are the real options for mental health support? Do not begin the conversation with a finger-wagging lecture. That doesn't sound very Guardian. This will immediately alienate a huge chunk of the intended audience, and you're immediately back to square one. I do think that's a fair point. I am laughing just because he told me not to start with a finger-wagging lecture, and it sounded like a finger-wagging lecture. So. I'm starting this series at the sharp end of the debate, looking at the people who are following one of the most popular thinkers and polemicists of our time, Jordan Peterson.
In what sense is our society male-dominated?
Now, Peterson is an interesting character in his own right. He's written a book, 12 Rules for Life, which has been a bestseller around the world, and his videos often go viral online, especially when he's being interviewed by female journalists. But that's not what I want to focus on today. I want to look at why Jordan Peterson is so popular and what it is about his message that has resonated with so many people.
The West has lost faith in the idea of masculinity. Now, that's no different than the death of God. It's the same thing.
Peterson's outspoken views on things like gender pronouns and the role of men and women in society have sparked huge debate. But there's more to his message. He does a lot of work around philosophy and religion and the idea of responsibility and purpose for people. This is interesting because, in a way, it's a form of self-help or life guidance, and his audience is predominantly made up of men.
I can't imagine I'm the only woman kind of wondering like, what's going on. Like.
I've come today because he's very, very provocative, and I know there's lots of things I won't agree.
He has a question, and I like the way he thinks about the question.
I don't agree with most of his views, but I like the fact that he's forthright with his opinion and he's got an opinion.
His message is just different. He just talks about meaning and responsibility, which no one else is talking about.
I think women should have opportunities, and I don't believe he thinks any different.
What would you say your political leanings?
I was very happy to vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
I'm broadly a socialist.
Culturally, I've been brought
We can go back to the presentation now.
lefty.
That's fine. I won't make you watch all of it. But that's just to kind of show where we set it out. We set up at the very top that it was open and conversational, but also trying to set out the main facts that were in place. And I tried really, really hard in this series to not have an opinion and to try and not push the traditional Guardian opinion, because we're trying to go out to an audience that maybe aren't familiar with what it is that we're talking about and who think that we're going to come with an agenda. So it was really interesting in this. Jordan Peterson, I'm not sure how famous he is in Finland, but in the UK, his book 12 Rules for Life is a best-selling book. In the United States, he's very, very well known. And a lot of the reports about him said that he was on the alt-right, or his fans were on the alt-right. So I wanted to go and explore that. I looked at comments on YouTube, and it seemed like there were some really concerning things. But then when I went to his event in Birmingham, and I spoke to people at the event, a lot of them were actually Guardian readers, and a lot of them said that they voted for Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn, who's on the left, and it was really, really interesting to be able to challenge some of the ideas, even as a journalist. And that was an opportunity that we were given with this project, which didn't have a strict news deadline. It didn't have to be out at 6 p.m. that night, didn't have to be out immediately. And so this video had an overwhelmingly positive response. We ended up having nearly 600,000 views on it. The comments underneath were really, really positive. And that's not something you often see on YouTube. But because we took a different approach, it definitely paid off. And it was the beginning of a series of 6 parts. And that went so well that we've now done a second series that we've just launched. So yeah, we also set very specific targets. So to reach new audiences, we did manage to do that. This specific video, of all the videos we launched last year on The Guardian's YouTube, had the most new subscribers of all of the videos. So combined, all 6 videos in this series had more new subscribers to The Guardian channel than all of the videos we published in a year combined. So our goal was to reach new audiences, and in doing this, we did achieve that goal. The other thing we were trying to do was increase the watch time of subscribers. So we have that data. You can see, if you're a subscriber, how much of the video that you're watching. And we managed to up those levels as well. There are some more stats at the end, more specific ones. I see people taking pictures, so I can give you more specific stats at the end. And we had way more comments and likes and shares, and it was supposed to generate a conversation as well. So our work wasn't necessarily supposed to have the finished, complete answer for people. It was to create a space where people would come to us for the conversation around men and not be having that elsewhere. So these are some of the comments. I didn't pick these out. My boss picked these comments out. So the ones that are nice about me, I didn't choose those. But it was surprising because I'm a woman and I'm an ethnic minority and, I'm a millennial. So traditionally in the UK, you would think that Jordan Peterson fans would probably not like me because of my background. And surprisingly, they managed to be won over. And I don't think we compromised on any of our core values or any of our politics, which just goes to show that there is room for shifting opinion on YouTube. And actually, it's not as much of a toxic space as people sometimes believe it to be. Did I go? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So There are obviously huge challenges, you know, when you're making a big decision like going into a space like YouTube and you're going to talk about an issue like masculinity. Politically, it's very difficult to do. You can take a risk and it might not pay off, it might not go well. But I think it was really important that we knew what we wanted to do. We knew we had a good intention with it. We had a lot of facts to back it up. And so that's what we did. We went into it very, very well informed. Like I say, my background is in issues that affect men. So I brought that with me to this project, which is something that maybe some traditional YouTubers that don't have a background in journalism might not necessarily have. The other point of being authentic, I think if you're taking a risk, one of the things that I found was that I put my hands up and I said, I'm a journalist, this is what I do, but this is YouTube as well, so I can be a little bit more flexible in saying, at the beginning of the video, I'm a bit nervous to do this, you know? You take into account what the reality of the situation is. It's very difficult to go into YouTube with a traditional kind of journalistic approach to things, especially because the audience there are looking for something slightly different. They want to feel like you're relatable, they want to feel like you're approachable. And that's also why the 6th episode I did was a response to comments. So I went in and I engaged with all of the questions that people had, and that actually had a really positive response as well. And being distinctive, we did something that was very different. I don't think that any news organization is doing this in specifically this way. Other organizations that are doing good things, for example, are Vox. Vox make amazing explainers, they're doing something else, and they are also very distinctive in what it is that they do. And I think that is really quite essential when it comes to trying to carve out a space on YouTube. We took a bit of the traditional Guardian brand, and then we made something that was completely different. And I think that is essentially what you have to do in order to succeed in that platform. So, yes, some of you were taking pictures of the numbers, and I don't think necessarily the best thing to always do is to look at numbers, but it is the easiest way of kind of measuring success. Overall, this shows that we've had nearly 2 million views of the videos in that first series. The watch time, incredibly long. I don't need to read those numbers. And this was a note written by my friend Adam, who says it is a ridiculously good conversion rate, which is what we wanted to do. We wanted to convert the people coming in into subscribers. So at the end of all my videos, I have to do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, and subscribe, you know, begging everybody to please stay with us for the rest of the journey. But another important point was that previously on The Guardian, we would make isolated videos. So we would make a video on, for example, like I did about the Bataclan attacks, isolated, or we'd do a video on, the volcanic eruption in Guatemala. And what we did here was we figured that if we could make a series for YouTube, that maybe that would help us to have the regular content going out, which would make the audience return, which is what YouTubers do in order to build their audiences. And that made a massive difference, 100%. We had people returning from the first videos and coming back and engaging and feeling like it was a community that we'd created on our platform. And I think that's a really, really important thing to mention. I have a few more numbers here. Wait. Okay, so another really important point was who it was that was engaging with our videos. The demographics, as you can see, show that the audience, 92% are under the age of 45. So the Guardian average age of a reader is more in their 50s or 60s. So people think it's a young paper, but actually a lot of our younger audience access us online. And as you can probably guess, 93% of the audience for the first series was men, which is something else that we were, trying to do, attract a different audience on a different subject. It was viewed around the world, which is pretty normal for our videos. But the point that they made was that our subscribers and our returning subscribers went up a lot. It was from like 2 to 4% of people like coming back and watching the whole videos. It went up to like 11 or 12%. So that was a massive deal. But one other piece I would add to this is that this is on YouTube, and some people maybe don't take that 100% seriously. They don't think, oh, that's real journalism, because it's a different platform and it's new. But today, they announced in the UK the award nominations for the Royal Television Society, and it's the Journalism Awards. And that's pretty much 100% broadcasters and news agencies. And it's for the first time, we've been nominated as a non-broadcast, non-news agency outlet. So we were nominated for digital journalism for this series. And so that just goes to show that you can actually straddle all of these things, do something that's considered serious in the industry and serious journalism, but also be accessing new audiences and be working on YouTube and developing also trust with journalists. I do speak from a British perspective. There's a really big lack of trust between the public and the media, and that's something that, post-Brexit is actually even worse than ever. So we have this problem that we need to work on. And I do believe that in reaching out to the audiences, looking more transparent and looking more approachable, and that we listen to our audiences, that has given them more trust in us, which makes them return to our platform and overall makes it much more positive. So the next one is what's up next. So because the first series did quite well on all of the metrics and engagement, and it's been nominated for awards and everything, they've agreed to do a second series. So in the second series, we started launching that 2 weeks ago. The first episode, we went to a UFC event, so that's MMA, mixed martial arts, a huge event for a lot of men. And I went to New York, to Madison Square Garden, and I thought this will be an interesting space to look at masculinity, and it was. Donald Trump turned up at the event, so he's in our video, he was there. So that's launched 2 weeks ago, where it had really good engagement. Last week we launched a video about circumcision, male circumcision, which has been very insightful and interesting. And we have several other things. Today we've got another one coming out in a black barbershop in London. So that's what we've been working on here. And so if anybody does want to watch, and there's links to my social media in the accounts, it'd be really interesting to hear your perspective from over here in the media in Finland. I'd be really interested to engage with you guys on that. I think there's no time to actually ask questions here, but if you do have questions, I'm going to be around for coffee afterwards, and I would love to talk to some of you and explain a little bit more. So, thank you.